Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tucker and Crowley Report. We're part of News Now and the Belmont Journal. I'm joined by Franklin Tucker, editor of the Belmontonian, Belmont's only news outlet, apart from the media center, and I'm Mike Crowley. So, Franklin, town meeting segment A wrapped up this week. What can you tell us?
Well, we had the final night of segment A, which is the non-budgetary segment in town meeting, and it was there was nothing really to get excited about. I think everything was pretty straightforward. Let's just go with the most uncontroversial. Well, there were two uncontroversial things that passed, and one was a bylaw extension, I think it was, or new bylaw in terms of parking, and that is with Ji Yun Hong, who presented it that any car that jets out to the sidewalk, we've talked about this in the past, it jets out into the sidewalk, that would be now deemed an obstacle that people have to go around, and it has a new rule. And actually, it has a new ticketing offense. This is a new ticketing offense. But as chief of the police, Jamie McIsaac said, he's really not going to. He's going to be very leery of having his officers issue tickets under this new regulation. And a lot of that has to do is where it gets adjudicated. Unlike the traffic court, traffic, any kind of traffic violation like speeding or parking, which goes before, a clerk, let's say. This one will actually go before a magistrate at the Cambridge District Court because it's a new bylaw. It's a different. It's not within the 26 existing codes violations under the traffic regulations. So as he said, if he started sending people to the municipal court, he'd hear from the judges pretty soon. Like, why are you clogging up our already, backlogged court system with these tickets? So,
but Franklin, my sense was that the police department will be a little bit more vigilant about complaints, and they may go out and contact owners and potentially, depending on the circumstances, issue warnings or if needed, a citation. But I think that the police chief, wasn't anticipating a big change in what the police department is doing.
I think that what he told me after he did his presentation that only the most persistent violators will get those special tickets. And even the petitioner said, "Look, I want this petition to be changing the culture and behavior among residents rather than another reason to ticket them." And I think she also sees that as a good thing, not going out there and trying to put as many tickets as possible out there.
All right, so Franklin, we wrapped up segment A of town meeting this week, and there were two, let's call them more or less significant actions or provisions in front of town meeting. Can we talk about those?
Sure. There was a citizen petition by Tommy Olson, who runs the Peyton Park
Musical Festival.
Musical Festival. She's done it for 32 years. This will be her 33rd. But she's always had a bugaboo about having to pay the fee, which turns out to be for all 12 concerts. It turns out that it comes to a little over $1,100. So, it's significant for her, and she believes that because this is a cultural event and it's free, and it's part of the culture of Belmont, why can she be exempted? Now, her first attempt at an article was not written as well as it should have been, because what it did is said that all cultural and all nonprofits would be able to do this. Well, there's over 300 nonprofits in Belmont, and that includes the Belmont Hill School, the Belmont Day School, the Country Club, So you could see, that there's a possibility, not a realistic possibility, but a possibility that you could have people renting out Belmont parks and not paying anything. So
that's right.
So what she did, what Tommy did, what Ms. Olson did, is she went to the bylaw review committee, and she worked with them to make to change the article. She basically threw an amendment where it then was very specific. It said musical and cultural events. She used the word musical in that in her article, in her amendment that went into the article. And so that would leave only two. That would be two events that would be exempt, and that would be hers and also Porch Fest. So, but this was done really late. I mean, this change was done really late, like 3 hours. I mean, the Board of Selectmen got hold of this change 3 hours before town meeting started.
Okay.
And Mark Pillillo and the rest of the board. Mark Pillillo is the chair of the select board. He got upset. He got upset enough that he asked Mike Widmer, who is the town administrator, to come up to this pre-town meeting of the select board to explain, how can you allow this to occur? And basically they hashed it out and they said, look, it is what it is. Let's just go forward with it. But he was still upset because he said that these changes were significant, like putting musical in there and other things in this new amendment. Well, Tommy heard about this, and what she did is she tried to do a runaround by asking that the vote that vote on her article be postponed until
right. She began sort of her presentation asking that the vote be postponed, but frankly, I didn't really understand what she was doing.
Yeah, she basically heard that. Well, she also knew that she wasn't going to get any kind of favorable action from any committee in town. In fact, they all voted unanimously, with maybe one exception for a person who abstained, that they were going to vote unfavorable action for this article. So I believe that she thought, an extra month, cooler heads could prevail, and then she would have some sort of a better chance of having this pass. But with the expectation of segment B being a very contentious one and probably going long in May and June, I think people in the town said, "Look, let's just vote on it. We know what this is about. Let's vote on it." It didn't go far.
So Franklin, I do want to ask you, Franklin. Do you think there was any significance attached to last year's fees having gone unpaid?
That's right. She has always said that these fees are extraordinary for her. She has still to pick up the bill from last year, and 2 years ago, Mark Pavillo paid for her.
That's right.
That's right. The same Mark Pavillo who was really upset what was happening in the last second moves. So, but basically, this was not going to survive a vote, and it didn't. It was defeated 40 to 175 to 4. So, that was it.
All right. So Franklin, there was another article before our last night of segment A, and that was
an easement, right?
An easement, and always exciting to talk about easements at town meeting. I can tell you.
Usually these easements get passed like 300 to nothing.
Right.
They're basically easements. They've been vetted by the town by Glenn Clancy, who's our town engineer, and it's basically a way of having. Well, what's happening is that Subaru, the dealership on Pleasant Street, is building out a brand new building for services and everything. Yep. So they needed the sewer and water lines to be connected a different way, and that happens all the time. But what happened is that an amendment was made to this easement. Now you think, an amendment. Is this going to change something? Is this going to question something? Well, what it was is that the bylaw review committee and its chairman, Bob McGaw. I shouldn't say it was the bylaw review committee. It was Bob McGaw, who happens to also be the chair of the bylaw review committee. He said an amendment. Basically, what town officials said was a pretty heavy-handed, red-lined copy editing of the article, and they
But
and
at the same time, Franklin, didn't town council say that for practical purposes, the legal import of both versions was identical?
well, that's the whole point, and as Roy Epstein, who's a member of the select board, said, why are we even doing this? Why is this even being brought up? He says the real world. He told me later. He said there's real world implications of this because, as he quoted, he said, because I can tell you a lot of time was devoted by town staff, town council at some expense, and by the select board to evaluate this amendment to seemingly no purpose. So you waste time. You waste your staff's time doing these things, and that's exactly right. It didn't change the purpose or the extent of the easement.
But then, oddly enough, Franklin, the select board elected to throw their support behind the amendment. Did they not?
That's the first thing Roy Epstein said. We're going to support this, but let's get this off my chest. Basically, what he said.
All right.
So what happened then? Of course, there's like competing amendments and competing articles. So both Bob McGaw and the town moderator, Mike Widmer, couldn't agree on which version of the amendment was going to be voted on. So they took a 5-minute break. George Hall, who is our town council, Patrice Garvin, town administrator, Mr. McGaw and Mr. Epstein got together, and it got a little heated. There was a little bit of, you could hear them talk, their voices raised, and it's just like, this is about an easement. This is not the most important thing in the world. So anyway, at the very end, what Epstein said is that the board was just it was best just to move on, just take the amendment, vote on that, and it passed 207 to 0.
So Franklin, I do want to ask: doesn't the bylaw review committee, of which Bob McGaw is a part, don't they already review the bylaws before they come before town meeting and make suggestions about potential wording changes before the articles are brought to town meeting?
That's right, but you understand this was not a bylaw. This is an easement. This is separate.
Okay.
So, but there is talk that the bylaw review committee may have been overstepping their bounds when it came. Let's go back to Tommy Olson. What basically what the bylaw review committee does is make sure the wording is correct, make sure their explanation of what they're doing is correct. It goes on, from. So you're not starting new phrases and stuff like that, and that basically it's up to standards. It appears that the bylaw review committee was actually helping Tommy write the new bylaw about her amendment to her article.
Okay.
Now that seems to go over the bounds of what they are supposed to do, and there is some talk about maybe discussing this in open session before the select board and see what their explanation is. So we might see a bit of we might see something happen in terms of trying to recalculate or reestablish what. You're right.
Recalibrate the bylaw review committee.
Exactly.
All right. So we.
So that's a lot of background there.
All right. Well, we could have more upcoming bylaw review brouhaha.
Yes.
All right. So Franklin, let's move on. Let me just add that segment B, the financial articles of town meeting, that's coming up May 31st.
That's right. We're going to have 4 days of those, maybe even a fifth, because it sounds like they're just by talking to people at town meeting, there seems to be apparently there's going to be some effort to take the budget for both the school for the schools basically, and maybe take some money out of one line item and put it into another. Those are always iffy. You've got to be very careful when you're trying to do that. But people are upset for one reason or another, and we'll see what their why they believe that they should do that.
All right. Well, we'll have to see what happens with that, and we'll be waiting until May 31st. So, Franklin, but more immediately, let's talk about the Memorial Day Parade. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, the Memorial Day Parade is going to have a significant change this year. Um, I believe it has to do with some of the work that's going on Belmont Street, but I just heard that offhand. But what I heard also is that it's going to be much shorter, and it's going to just be in one segment of the town. If you remember, for the longest period of time, the parade went from Cushing Square. It would go down Trapello, then Belmont, all the way to Grove Street, take that corner, and then go to the Grove Street cemetery, the Belmont Cemetery, and then they would have a dedication, a memorial service for the people who've died for this country.
All right. So what changes this year, Franklin?
Well, the start is actually going to be where it used to finish. The start will be at the cemetery. There will be a ceremony there. I believe it's going to be like half a ceremony. And then there will be a march to the Belmont Memorial, where it is, the Veterans Memorial out on Clay Pit Pond off of Concord Avenue. And that's where it's going to finish. So it's going to be a shortened version of the parade. It's going to be in that one eastern section of the town. And I understand that there are some veterans who are not happy with that because it kind of diminishes what we're doing there. People should also know that in many towns, Memorial Day services happen in one place.
Right.
There's no parades at all. So we are still going to have a parade, but it's going to be shorter than it was in the past.
And is there enough controversy about the change that we may see some vets dropping out of the parade?
No, not at all.
All right.
They'll be there.
All right. Well, that's good news. Let's talk about, Franklin, Saturday night Lacrosse Night.
That's right. We have Lacrosse Night. It's the second Lacrosse Night, and it is going to be held at Harris Field. I believe, there'll be two games, one at 4 and one at 6. And it's going to be the boys and girls will be taking on Arlington. And the boys and girls are in playoff position right now, and that's good. They have both winning records, so come on out. Kids who are in lacrosse, this is a night for you. A lot of swag, a lot of fun activities. And come on down. It's going to be fun.
All right. It sounds good. Well, thank you, Franklin. And you can see more of Franklin's reporting at belmontonian.com. Be sure to check it out. And also tune in next time to see another segment of the Tucker and Crowley report. And we will see you then.